Okay, let's take a look at Euripides Hippolytus, the first 8 lines. This is how it looks. Let's just take a look at the first line for some meter. This is a tragedy. The meter is iambic trimeter. I've also marked the caesura there, since it's after the seventh half part, as it were. You can call this the heptameral caesura. Okay, the first 2 lines. Let me just show you how this all gets chunked. Polé, here you're going to want to take that as meaning mighty or great or even influential. Kouk anonymous is going to be and not without name. There is influential and not without a name in Brotoisi amongst people, and then uranu teso within heaven, thea keklemai Kupras. I am the goddess Kypris. So we'll come back to all this in just a second. Let's go ahead and look at the one word that I didn't mark here, the particle men. Men is used to start speeches in prose and poetry, and that might be more or less the way to account for that here. I've given you the example of Sophocles' Ajax, just to give you another example of men at the beginning of a tragedy. Okay, just to talk about accents for a second. The word brotoisi here is from brotos, not brotos. When you have the accent as an oxytone, so the accent's on the last syllable, that means a person, but brotos, a paroxytone. This is a Homeric word, it means gore. Then we have thea. This is the word for goddess, not thea. That's a citing. It's from the verb theaomai. One other thing to note is that all adjectives, with respect to anonymous here, all adjectives with a privative alpha have a recessive accent. It means that the accent goes back as far as possible. And the ending is to termination, meaning that the masculine and the feminine is going to be os. Here's just some basic review that kook there is kai u. Then we have another kappa at the end of the word because anonymous starts with a vowel, but one that's not aspirated. If it were aspirated, we'd have kai there. Let's just look at the verb here. So keklemai is a first person singular perfect passive indicative verb from kaleo, so you would literally take it to be I have been called, but this is more or less an artistic way, I suppose you could say, a non-standard way of basically saying I am. Okay, then we have, so Aphrodite here, she says that she's mighty and not without a name. Then we get 2 groups amongst people and within heaven. So people and her divine colleagues. This last word here, aso, could have been written instead of epsilon sigma omega. It could have been written with epsilon iota sigma omega, and indeed that's what we get as the poem goes on. Aso, there on line 4, that is going to take the genitive as it does on line 2. Pontu here refers to the Black Sea, and the Termonon Atlantikon, that's going to refer to the Rock of Gibraltar. So they're at the southern tip of Spain. So basically this is saying giving the whole range from the east, the Black Sea, over to that southern tip of Spain. There's a whole range of the ancient Greek world, more or less. So this hosoi clause, hosoi you can typically take to mean, yes, as many as, but typically it's better to translate it as all those who, now you see, live within this space, right, the Black Sea and the Rock of Gibraltar. To kick this off, though, you probably want to understand something like, of all those who live within those. That'll become clear as the poem goes on. But these people are further defined as seeing the light of the sun. Phos there is an Attic form. The vowels alpha, omicron have been contracted. And the genitive is photos. This is a neuter. Now I just give you the nominative and genitive of Helios. You say Heliu. You see how in the genitive singular the accent is going to shift. This is how it continues, the next two lines, just to show you how this gets chunked. Presbeo is going to be the main verb there. It's going to take tous sevontas as its object, and tous sevontas is going to have its own object, tama krate. So presbeo, Aphrodite says, I rank highly those who honor my powers. I'll come back to the min and day. Actually, let's look at that now. So it says, you could overtranslate this as, on the one hand, I presbeo, but typically when you have tous min, you expect to see tous day. We don't get that here, but you still have this on the one hand, on the other hand, contrast. So what she goes on to say is that sphalo, I cause them to fall, or I ruin them. You could really take hosoi all the way to the end of the line as the object of sphalo. He's going to ruin all those who. Let me get this phrase from phroneo mega. Think big. It basically has a pejorative meaning, namely to be arrogant. And here you have eis hemas. This is a plural form in place of a singular. She causes whom to fall? All those who are arrogant against me is what it would be. So just to show you the final lines here. Inestigar 4, now she's going to tell you why this is the case. For there is even in the race of the gods, kan theon gene, even in the race of the gods, there is this. Now you get tode at the end of that line, line 7. You want to refer to this as a cataphoric in terms of its dexis. So dexis is all about pointing, and in this case the tode, forms of tode, are going to point to something that's about to happen. So it points down, as opposed to something like hutos, which is going to point up, as it were. It's an anaphoric. It's going to point up to something that was just mentioned. Tode is going to introduce something that's about to be said. And in this case, it's Cairo with a participle. What do these gods have in common then? They rejoice in being honored. Being honored by whom? By people. And you can see, typically you would have hupo, anthropon. Here you have anthropon, hupo. The accent does shift to that first syllable of the preposition when it follows its noun. This is something called anastrophe. You're not going to see this very often in prose, except with the preposition peri, pi, epsilon, rho, iota. But there you have it. That's the beginning of Euripides Hippolytus.